Good morning and welcome. We're about to begin. So I'm Eileen Reilly of CAMBA, and this is Razvi. And he and I are among the co-founders of WAAB. And we'd like to greet you and thank you for coming here today in commemoration of our 10th year. And we'd like to welcome you to this, our 10th annual forum, From Fear to Hate to Hope, getting there together. Mo and I are going to spend just a few minutes telling you something about how we come to be before you today. And Mo is going to say a few words about how we started and how and why we are all Brooklyn began.
Thank you, Eileen. So again, my name is Mohammad Razvi. Yes, Mohammad Razvi. Many of the people who know me, they know me as Mo. Basically, We Are All Brooklyn started out with a few friends coming together, individuals who really didn't know too much about each other, and I actually want them to, just stand up and please, give them a round of applause. Bob Kaplan, Chris Johnson, Reilly, and myself. This was actually started after 9/11. What had happened was community members were feeling, and especially in the Muslim community, that there was a disconnect between the majority of the community from the other faiths, and we felt that we need to reach and work with everyone. Because of the war that was about to start at that time, and I can't believe it, I'm saying this again, there's another war that might be starting soon. We really need to get to know each other even further and to really work together so collectively so the things that are happening outside the country don't affect us here within the country, especially here in Brooklyn. As we started, just want to give you this story. Like, my daughter was pushed down the steps after 9/11 just because she was wearing a scarf, and she was cursed at as if she had anything to do with it. My daughter could be American as apple pie, and she came to me and she was just devastated. I have no idea the effects that had happened. My neighbors who were next to me, Italian paisans, who were looking at me differently. I've been there for almost 20 years. But that's something that's bringing us together, and we're very fortunate that we were able to bring things together and coming together at times when others did not. When the Jewish community, the Muslim community, and the Christian community and other groups of faith really came together. When one person was attacked, we were there. You'll see these pictures that are going to be displayed when other community members, when Muslims are being attacked. And recently you heard about that mosque that was right on January 1st, there was a Molotov bottle thrown at it right in front of the doorsteps. And there were little kids in that mosque, very afraid whether or not they should go to school. And the leadership from across the board came together. This is where we are 10 years later. Eileen?
So as Mo was saying, we started as a responsive organization, right? We were being reactive. We were being reactive to hate. And in those early days, a lot of the activities that we organized were appropriate to that response. We focused on educating community leaders and community members onto how to protect, what are your rights, what is a hate crime. We produced palm cards in a variety of languages that people could carry with them and have on them if they were to witness a hate crime, if they were to find out about a hate crime, and more importantly, to educate the police. Because of course, we only know that hate crimes occur if they're reported and if there's attention brought to them. So in those early days, the forums and the mechanisms that we focused on had to do with educating people to use the structures that are in place, and that we were there as a sort of as a watchdog agency to encourage and make sure that the police, that the DAs also understood what their responsibilities were in responding. And then that grew over the 5 years. We held forums that were always focused on practical acquisition of skills and knowledge enabling communities to organize, to come together over on issues of mutual concern, and to have practical responses using the foundational tools of community organizing. I think that the most, well, I know my proudest accomplishment, and I think our most vibrant and effective accomplishment, is the creation of the We Are All Brooklyn Fellowship. In your folders, there's a one-page description of the fellowship. It is beginning its 6th year. And over the past 5 years, we have trained almost 200 fellows, both through the We Are All Brooklyn Fellowship and its spin-offs, its children, the Haitian Fellowship and the We Are All Bronx Fellowship. And essentially, it's a year-long leadership development program that's dedicated, to advancing the next generation of leaders from communities that don't necessarily have access to more traditional kinds of fellowships, like the Revson or the Coro Fellowship. And the idea is to train people and give them practical tools to become change agents in their communities. And we encourage all of you to participate. It's for younger leaders, people under 35 years old, and we're always looking for nominations. So please take this information, and we will be seeking nominations, and you'll all be on our mailing list, and we hope that you will respond. Now, the model of We Are All Brooklyn as a model of community organizing and effectiveness has been replicated in Queens and in the Bronx. And it's been replicated internationally, and I want Mo to share a little bit about that.
So, believe it or not, Brooklyn is an example of how peace can be found in other places. And I definitely want you to, again, there's a wonderful person that you're going to hear from later on, Rabbi Bob Kaplan. Please stand up one more time, Bob. Bob Kaplan is, he and I, we travel on behalf of the State Department to Israel, on behalf of the British government to London, and recently we just came back from Moscow. And we are using this model, this example, and showing them, this is how we really work together. It's not about hugging, well, a nice young lady like this, I would, but, and getting along and singing a song. It's about really concrete movements and talking about the issues. My community, the reason we want to get those services, this is how it's going to be delivered to my community. It's not going to happen if A, B, and C. It's just not it. And this is what we were discussing, and we explained to them explicitly. We're not here for the priest process. We're just here to tell you how to get that light bulb changed on that street lamp so your daughter and my daughter can cross that street safely at night. How do we get the municipalities to work so your community members can have a better garbage pickup day? These were the quality of life issues we emphasized to them. And believe it or not, and especially in Israel, I'm really so impressed. They have a coalition of the next generation of young people. They started a mediation center. They actually have the Israeli Arabs and the Israeli Jews working together to build a wedding hall for each of them. It is just phenomenal, and the State Department said, we're going to fund it. And we were like taken back, oh my God, For the first time in history in Israel, in Akko, the chief rabbi was presenting a speech to the chief imam's congregation of over 400 people. That never happened in the history of Akko. There's a small, and we tell them, we're just two Brooklyn guys who care and working together. But anyway, these are the things that are possibilities.
Yeah, and to sum up, we hope that by the end of the day, we've had an opportunity to have a conversation, because that's what this really is. It's the inauguration of a series of conversations. And we hope that you get a chance to meet, new leaders, and we're hoping for these conversations to continue over the next year and beyond. Now, through this conversation, we want to begin to work together to combat fear and to build hope here in Brooklyn. And the fear has many causes, right? And fear lives in our hearts and in our heads. And the circumstances that caused us to create We Are All Brooklyn are also circumstances that many of our community members find themselves in terms of encountering violence and encountering and participating in hate crimes, and then simply in the way in which one feels perceived by the police, the ways in which people are perceived as not being safe, in their communities and in their homes. And we're hoping that through the focus on youth and economics, and that the groups that you've chosen to be in today, that we can, through an elicited process, receive information from you, what's important to you, what you think the challenges are, and then we can continue the conversation over the next year, and then implement and organize around these issues.
So once again, it's a time for many who are professionals and individuals who will get a chance to meet others and try to figure out where we can move together collectively. And now it's 10 years later, we definitely want to hear what is the next thing that's we should be concentrating on for the communities. It's so important, and I definitely wanted to just once again thank you for coming here, and more importantly, there's one thing I want to leave you with. Children are not born to hate. You're not born to hate. It's something that you pick along in the schools, being bullied, being so forth. And nowadays, because of this, socialization of Facebook and all these other venues that the kids have, it's more hurtful. It's so hurtful. I've never seen, and hey, believe me, I grew up in the projects. Well, when it was called the projects, not public housing. All right, right up here. Got my knuckles and the scars to prove that I got to prove myself too. But the important thing is the way these kids are being attacked at this moment, and the way they are being bullied, the way all these things are, coming together. We got to figure out where's that hope and how do we move forward with that. With that, I want to thank you, and I'm going to request Guilford Monroe to introduce our keynote speaker. Thank you.
Good morning to everyone. It seems like this crowd wasn't at the parade yesterday. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. All right, give me a good, nice Brooklyn good morning. My name is Guilford Monroe, pastor of the Mount Zion Church in East Flatbush, and also the alumni fellows for We Are Brooklyn. And so much of my success in the community I would attribute it to the We Are Brooklyn Fellows program. So I am a living testament to the work that they have talked about. And at this time, I would like that all of my fellows to stand so we can recognize you as well. This morning, we want to look at, just before we have our keynote speaker to come to us this morning, we want to inform you that in your folders there is a yellow note card that you can take notes of, write questions, so that at the end of the panel discussion, someone will come forward and receive those so that we can respond to those before we end. And so that while you listen to the discussion and also to listen to Reverend Alfonso Wyatt as he comes forward, that you can make some mental notes as well. My colleague is the Vice President and Project Manager of the Jericho Faith-Based Technical Assistance Project. He has worked with 3 generations of young people as an educator, counselor, program developer, administrator, mentor, and advocate. He has created innovative programs that respond to the needs of young people in foster care, group homes, public schools, community-based organizations, detention facilities, and the broader faith community. I guess there has been no place that you have gone, my friend. Reverend Wyatt, the son of 2 Baptist preachers, is an ordained minister on the staff of the Greater Island Cathedral of New York and Queens. He attended Howard University, Columbus Teachers College, and the Ackerman Institute for Family Therapy, Columbia's Institute for Nonprofit Profit Management, and the New York Theological Seminary. He has served as an advisor to government, foundation, religious institutions, universities, youth servicing organizations, and nonprofits from around the world. So I am very, very happy and honored and pleased to have this man come forward, who is a giant among giants and who have done the work that we all talked about every day, Reverend Wyatt.
Since Pastor's already warmed up the crowd, I won't belabor you with getting a good morning. Give me any kind of good morning you can. Good morning. Let's see, that was a little reverse psychology. I'm going to have to work with that. First of all, let me just say what an honor it is to be with you here in Brooklyn College. And I want to thank my rabbi, Rabbi Kaplan. He has been acknowledged. We met some decades plus ago, and we knew we needed to stay in touch. When he finished speaking, I was like, who is this man? I was getting ready to leave, but something said no. And I am so glad that we have continued this relationship. I want to thank your staff. I want to thank the organizers. I want to welcome the fellows. I don't know if this is the group that I entertained in my office. Yes, it is. I would have them in my office. I do have to amend my introduction. I am now the former Vice President of the Fund for the City of New York. As of last night, I retired and then refired. So you're getting the refired Fonzo. I don't know how much different he is from the retired one, but you have no one to complain to. Excuse me, that slip out. All right. I want to talk, and Brother Mo, where's Mo? Where did he go? Where did Mo? That's a little poem. Where's Mo? Where did he go? He stepped out. Well, then I'll talk about him in absentia. I was blessed to meet Mo some years ago and help him to raise money. That's one of the things that I enjoyed as Vice President of the Fund for the City of New York, is to help people who are trying to help people, who are trying to use whatever they have, and sometimes their own resources. Somebody know what I'm talking about. Your own dollars. There you go, Imam. I was looking for you. I'm sitting right over here. And then I have to pay respect to the Imam that is here. Yes. So, I'm going to hit it and quit it. I'm going to drop it and walk away from it and hope that when it's done, it is done. I had the joy of riding up the elevator with my brother. We went to Howard University together, had not seen each other in, we don't even want to say how many years, but I'm glad to see that you're still on the battlefield. And have one of my sisters from my church who is in her own right a known diversity consultant expert. So I thought it would be good, and I hope to introduce her to you, Brother Kaplan, so that we can make sure that we do. And to Dr. Sweeney, who needs no introduction, who is a legend as it relates to public health issues in this country. All right, protocol has been established. I took this theme, and I couldn't go to sleep last night, so I said, well, I might as well write something and get something down on paper. And I looked at this thing about fear and hate, and what, you know, I said, well, they put me in a box here with fear and hate. There's not too much and too many places you can go to. But I imagine I have a very still verdant imagination. And I imagine what would happen if fear and hate got together and had a baby. Barbara's shaking her head. She said, he didn't get enough sleep. Stay with me. If fear and hate had a baby, they would have to name it irreconcilable differences. And irreconcilable differences, as it would grow up, would give new tone, texture, and dimension to what we call the terrible twos. These would be the horrible twos. These would be the twos that we would never want to meet. But when fear and hate copulate and give rise to seeds that go into the minds, into the hearts of people, something happens. Something happens that allows folk to feel that it is all right to move on people. From it could be from the street level, the Bloods and the Crips who are operating in that way, or it could be on the global level, as it were, in terms of wars and world wars. So what I want to do is focus on your theme and look at where you allowed some room, and that was in the word hope. So beloved, for this time, I want to focus on hope, and I want to give some lessons to what I would call hope warriors. I'm hoping and praying that there are hope warriors. I'm hoping and praying that there are people who understand what it means to be a hope warrior. I gotta warn you, I've got to admonish some that everybody is not called to be a hope warrior. For whatever reason, predisposition, or inclination, it just won't work. But I believe that there are some budding hope warriors, some apprentice hope warriors, somebody that is intrigued enough to let down whatever they hold in order to embrace something that is new. So I have 7 lessons. 7 lessons. Since we're in college, we might as well have lessons for hope warriors. Are you ready? Are you feeling it? Are you with me? All right. The first lesson is that you have to work hard to be hopeful. Hope does not just come because you want it. Hope doesn't come just because you know how to spell it. Hope doesn't come just because you need it. You have to work to be hopeful. And what I found in life is that the things that come easiest are the things that you don't have to work hard to get. You don't have to work too hard to hate. You don't have to work too hard to look down on someone else. You don't have to work too hard to cast differences within groups. But hope needs work. And some folk can't find and marshal the energy in order to make hope evident. So that's lesson number 1. This is how it's going to go, so just in case. Number 2 is hope can only be evidenced when things seem hopeless. I'm getting a little excited. Y'all can be wherever y'all want to be. I'm getting excited. Hope can only be evidenced when things seem hopeless. You know, hope has taken a bad hit, because it can only be evidenced when you say, oh my God, I hope that this would happen, or this situation would come apart. It rides on the back of hopelessness. Hope rides on the back of hopelessness. I hope you can see this image of hope riding on the back of hopelessness. It is only when our backs are up against the wall. It is only when there's a situation that we cannot make a difference in, no matter how hard we try, that we begin to kindle that thing called hope. That thing that is inside of each and every one of us. That thing that was given to us as a gift. That we did not earn, and sometimes the things that come for free we do not respect nor honor. It has to be activated by someone who feels that there has to be a different way, a better way. That's why, Rabbi, I am so happy to see so many young leaders here. Because, see, in some instances, I'm just going to be honest with you, some folk ain't going to change. For whatever reason. But there is hope in the folk in here. Now, please, people who just got their AARP notice that I'm not trying to cast dispersion. All of us should be about sowing seeds into our younger leaders and to teach them, show them, encourage them not to follow the hopeless paths of those who have gone astray, have gone to a whole nother place. Number 3, hope is not the last expression of the weak as oftentimes portrayed. Let me get that right here. Hope is not the last expression of the weak as oftentimes portrayed. Sometimes when you tell people, I hope, they look at you as weak. What do you mean you hope? You should just make it happen. What do you mean hope? Hope is the last refuge of the hopeless. You know, all of that little grand kind of talking. Let me tell you something. I'm getting excited. I got to slow myself down because y'all looking like y'all looking at TV, but that's all right. It takes a strong person to evidence hope in a hopeless situation. Hope is not weak. Hope is not ephemeral. I know you thought I was going to say something else. Hope is very strong. If you look at the power of hope, it is the power of hope that resided in the hearts of those who were brought to this country as slaves, through the Middle Passage, in the bows of ships. It was hope that said that you may chain up the hands, but you will never lock up or chain up hope. It was hope that was able to sustain those who marched on a forced migration in this country and what is called the Great Trail of Tears. It was hope that sustained those who were on their way to Auschwitz and to Treblinka and to Dachau. It was hope. It ain't weak. Look at all that has been done to hope in an effort to stamp it out. Look at all that hope had to withstand at the hands of those who would try to squeeze it, who would try to nullify it. When I think of a hope warrior, I think of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And I was blessed to follow in his footsteps, not as one who served with him, but I walked down the same Memphis streets that he walked down on his way to help and settle a garbage strike in Memphis. Had nothing to do per se with the civil rights era. I was in Memphis as a speaker. And I asked my host, after I did what I thought I did, I said, well, I want to go to the Lorraine Motel. And for those who don't know, that was the place that Martin Luther King was assassinated. They said, well, Mr. Wyatt, it's in a very dangerous part of the community. Which I translated, we ain't taking you there. I said to myself, if this hope warrior could come into a situation that was fraught with violence, who am I to be afraid to walk to the Lorraine Motel? And I walked there. I wanted to walk there. And as you heard, I went to Howard University. I was a Civil War and Reconstruction major. I knew at 17 years old that that was a definitive period for my people, and that in many instances the vestiges of that time still is wreaking havoc. I walked past the Civil War monuments. I read the names of generals that were familiar to me. And I made my way to the Lorraine Motel. I saw where hope died, beloved. I looked on the second balcony. I imagined in my mind and did triangulation between where the factory was, where the bullet came from, and where it hit our hope warrior, and where he died. And I wondered if it was worth it. But here it is today. Hope springs eternal. It springs eternal in the minds of those who will not accept the status quo. It springs eternal in the hearts and in the actions of those who said that we can and must do better. Hope is not the last expression of the weak, but I believe it is the protestation of the strong. I'm glad I got that out. Number 4, hope is the spirit energy needed to get to the desired state. What is your desired state? What is it that bonds us together, both as Brooklynites, for those who are, for those who are members of various denominations and faith traditions? What is it that holds us together? About 15, 20 years ago, I was asked to be a part of the Interfaith Center of New York, started by the Right Reverend James Parks Morton, former dean of the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. Up to this point, I had no interfaith experience. I didn't even have really an interest in an interfaith experience. I knew what I knew, and that was good enough for me. But when my mentor asked me if I would help him, I was able to start the Rabbi Marshall Meyer retreats that have gone on. It's gone on. You talk about you going around the world. The retreat philosophy has gone on around the world. And Brother Mo touched on it when he talked about the lights. If the light ain't working, all of us who got to walk past that light are in darkness. That becomes our mutual bottom line. Helping to find folk who understand the mutual bottom line that unites us inextricably, that ties us. At 9/11, talking about hope, when I heard that African American boys mainly were beating up Muslims, or folk that they thought were Muslim, they were actually Sikhs, children whose families are from the Sikh tradition, I asked my pastor if I could hold a peace rally at my church. And he said yes. And I brought as many diverse folk that I could find. I went all up and down Jamaica. I went to the mosque that was actually firebombed that Mo mentioned. I tried to get as many folk as possible together to understand. And this was in October. This was just about 2 or 3 weeks after 9/11. One person who said he was going to make a difference. Well, after we had a Hindi prayer, don't tell anybody we had a Hindi prayer right in the middle of our great church. Yeah, right. After we had prayers, after we were able to assemble and had young people to sing, after this lovely Latino, this little group of elementary school students sang The Impossible Dream, one of my favorite songs, I got up and said, children of oppressed people will not become the oppressors of other people's children. And do you know, there was a person from the New York Times sitting in the congregation unbeknownst to anyone. And that line went out around the world. That's the power of hope. That's the power that can't be regulated, that can't be stuffed in these little boxes that we have become so tethered to. That's the power of hope that is able to bring light in dark places. That is the power. Oh, I got to pull it back because I don't want to talk about power. Oh, y'all going out that way, huh? Will not be deterred. Number 5, hope works at optimum hopefulness when it is shared. If you got hope and you keep it to yourself, that's good for you. But that's not catalytic. That's not synergistic. That is not powerful enough to change the status quo. Hope, when it is shared, when my hope unites with your hope, when my hope gets all up in your hope, and we start mixing up stuff, and we start looking at the strengths of your hope and the strengths of my hope, when we start looking at where the gaps in hope exist, then we can do something that is great. I was taught in school when I had to struggle through geometry that the whole is equal to the sum of its parts. Anybody ever heard that? Anybody heard that? You didn't have to meet a Euclid to hear that. That the whole is equal to the sum of its parts. But when hope jumps on the sum of its parts, beloved, the whole can be greater. I want to live out my life in the greater than gift of hope and take that and share it, teach it, push it, whatever I need to do to move it on. I'm almost finished. Number 6, hope does not play favorites. There is something egalitarian about hope. You don't ride on a donkey or an elephant. It's not rich nor is it poor. It's not black nor is it white or any shade in between. Hope is hope. It don't need us. It doesn't really want us to misshape it. It doesn't want to be turned into a weapon or some kind of preference that somehow my hope, because of where I eat, where I sleep, what my zip code ends in, that somehow my hope is better than somebody else's hope. When hope starts to fight against hope, all we get is hopelessness. I got to move. Number 7 and the last, and perhaps the most optimistic lesson, Pastor. Hope will never die. No matter what has been done to it, no matter how it has been punished, misused, misdefined, it refuses to die. I treat and meet people. I've been in rooms where the last breath has been taken. You know what I'm talking about, Doc. And while that is dramatic, it helps me to understand the true power of hope, because there is no last breath in hope. As the highest expression of God's creation in the form of being a human being, this understanding and mandate that if we get together, if we unite, then we cannot be defeated. If I see your goals and your children as my children, then I don't have to worry about where you're coming from. If I'm in relationship, I cannot tell you how many times I've been on committees and been asked to either be a part or chair an action, generally after something negative has happened, and we have to find a solution. And I tell people, you can't be in relationship without having a relationship. Now you can deal with that with hope, or you can deal with that in your personal life. It just don't work. So, as I get ready to go to my seat, I want to leave you with something. I'm a poet. And I want to give you a poem. Barbara, you're going to hear it again. It's called The Enlightenment. I didn't give the title, though. I'm a critic now. The Enlightenment. This is for you, Brooklyn. Brooklyn. Yes, indeed. I can tell you stories about Brooklyn. All right. Children of the light, heed this urgent call. Use thine power over darkness. Stumble, never fall. Illume dark corners in all hearts and minds. Share the precious flame, the tie that binds. Hatred is thine enemy, and ignorance another foe. So band together small flames wherever ye may go. There is strength in number. Remember, ye are light, and every flicker is a wound to darkness. This our eternal fight. To quote my brother Jesse Jackson, keep hope alive.
Microphone is electric. Good morning. My name is Liza Kramer. I'm a member of the We Are All Brooklyn Steering Committee, and I was a first-year We Are All Brooklyn Fellow. It is my pleasure this morning to introduce today's panel moderator, Marilyn Gelber, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about her. Marilyn Gelber is the president of the Brooklyn Community Foundation, the first and only community foundation focused exclusively on Brooklyn. The Brooklyn Community Foundation works with the most effective and creative nonprofit organizations to address the complex challenges of Brooklyn's 70 neighborhoods and 2.5 million people. Ms. Gelber was the founding executive director of Independence Foundation, Brooklyn's largest private charitable foundation. Prior to joining the Independence Foundation, Ms. Gelber served in New York City's public sector for 28 years as an urban planner and administrator. She was the first woman commissioner of the New York City Department of Environmental Protection, chief of staff to former Brooklyn Borough President Howard Golden, and director of Neighborhood Strategy Planning for the New York City Department of City Planning. Ms. Gelber also served as the New York City Comptroller's appointee to the New York City Procurement Policy Board, was a mayoral appointee to the New York City Water Board, and held the Brooklyn seat on the New York City Planning Commission. She was the founding chair of the Committee on Foundations of the Community Bankers Association of New York State, and was a member of the Board of Directors of Philanthropy New York, where she chaired the City Connect Committee. For those of you who can't see the name tags, Marilyn is over there. Ms. Gelber was awarded the President's Medal by Brooklyn College and received an honorary doctorate from St. Joseph's College for her community service. She was recognized with the Freedom Star Award by the Brooklyn branch of the NAACP and received the Ruth Moskowitz Award from the Kings County Supreme Court. Ms. Gelber is a great friend of We Are All Brooklyn and was honored at our 2009 Diversity Night with the Brooklyn Cyclones, and she commented earlier how much fun it was to throw the first pitch on the field. She is a lifelong New Yorker, a graduate of Queens College, and a resident of Boerum Hill, Brooklyn. It is my pleasure to introduce Marilyn Gelber.
I've been given my time instructions. Good morning, everybody. Could we give another hand to Reverend Wyatt? That was extraordinary. The way our format works this morning, I'm going to introduce our panel who, along with me and you, have sat here and listened to that extraordinary speech. And I will ask the panelists to respond briefly. And then we'll start a longer, more intense discussion about this topic. Fear, hate, and hope. How does it all come together? What should we be doing over the next decade? Because this has been a tumultuous decade. And to echo some of the advice from Reverend Wyatt, there's been a lot of hard work. And just when it seemed hopeless, that's when We Are All Brooklyn was born. So let me get right to it, hit it and quit it, as the advice says. And let me start by introducing our panelists. We have with us, first, Carl Hung. Carl just retired as president and CEO of the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce. Carl is a Brooklyn guy, grew up in Sunset Park, has worked on issues around the economy for many years, knows Brooklyn very, very well, and as, again, this decade has not only produced wars, it's also produced some of the most extraordinarily difficult economic times we've seen. Let me start with Carl and ask briefly your reaction to Reverend Wyatt's remarks.
In a word, it's inspiring. You certainly hit the mark when you say that in these past couple of years have been particularly challenging for our economy. Brooklyn, compared to other boroughs, have done a little better, but you can always do better, just in terms of the long run. What I found particularly instructive with Reverend Wyatt's comments was the theme that we have to keep hope alive. And I think that when I talk to the business community, there's a little bit of mix of hope and there's a little mix of resignation. And I think that there are equal arguments for both. With regards to hope in terms of, there seems to be some green shoots in the economy coming up, but there's also some argument for resignation in that every time you turn the corner around with regards to the economy, a big scary thing is right behind the corner, and I think that for the U.S. economy and it's going to have its effect on the local economy is really how the international markets play out, particularly with how Greece reacts. With the current bailout and with the status of Italy with regards to whether it can meet its financial obligations.
Thank you, Carl. I want to come back to some of the things that you've said because, again, war, economic collapse, normally a recipe for very nasty things happening, and yet Brooklyn continues to be a place where people have a positive outcome and a positive outlook. So I want to come back to that. So there's the economy, and then there's the role of faith. Very honored to have with us Dr. Hussain, who is the Imam of Al-Mahdi Islamic Cultural Center. You and I don't know each other, so I will take the liberty of just asking you directly, what do you think of this guy's faith speech?
Good morning to everybody. Thank you, and I'm honored to be here in this beautiful morning in the Multicultural Society representatives. Mr. Wyatt has mentioned 7 points, and first chapter of Quran has 7 verses. And we believe there are 7 heavens, 7 skies, and 7 days of week. So he provided us very nice material for entire week as a homework. The issues which he mentioned are very sensitive, impressive, and workable. Let me add one more thing, that fear has 2 kinds. Sometimes we need fear. Fear of God, fear of law, fear of all harmful things which may put harm to our bodies, our souls. But the fear which we feel usually, this creates hopelessness and disappointment. And hate creates terror, but hope creates success. May God bless us with the success.
Thank you. Georgina Ngozi, another Brooklynite. Georgina is the president and CEO of the Brooklyn Children's Museum. Every day, the young people of Brooklyn and beyond walk through the doors of that museum. Georgina, your reaction to Reverend Wyatt's speech.
I'm going to try to do this without great emotion, although I'm a woman of great emotion. First, let me say I'm humbled and grateful to be a part of this gathering. I also want to say that this work that we've been called to do today is work of the heart. I want to encourage all of you on some time today to take a moment to look in the mirror and say, I can make the difference. In regard to Reverend Wyatt's wonderful presentation, I was drawn to the many times in which he used the word children, because indeed that's where hope is born and carried for many years. When I was a teenager, I was deeply concerned about race and inequality, and was a young militant or revolutionary, one might say, even around here around Brooklyn College, and was chased by police on horses with hoses because I was a young revolutionary. I remember being chased down Flatbush on Newkirk Avenue, as a matter of fact. And as a child, I was a very angry person. I moved from Bed-Stuy into Flatbush and learned about the Jewish community and ultimately became a part of the Jewish community. But early on, I used to say, Mom, I don't understand these people. They make me so angry. They say my dog is pooping on their yard when he didn't do it. And my mother said to me, you must learn not to be so angry. And as God would have it, to help me with that defect in my personality, He sent me into the world of Jewish communities everywhere. I've lived all over the country, and in every state and city that I've visited or lived, I've looked for the Jewish community so that I could have my knish, I could have my conversation, and I could talk about my Jewish Brooklyn community. I say this to you, and I open my mouth not really knowing how I would respond because there is such great emotion, to say to you that we have an opportunity when our children come into this world, and I see it every day in the Children's Museum, where they walk through those doors with hope and wonder and expectation, and what they tend to refer to as wishes for something. That's our opportunity, not only to help them see how wonderful they are as human beings, but how wonderful everyone else around them is as a human being. If we don't snatch that opportunity, we lose it. As an adult doing this work, and I've worked 40 years on behalf of children in some capacity, I am increasingly aware of how children perceive how we perceive them. And it's not good. And it's when that takes hold of their spirit that they begin to see themselves in a very negative way. We do it through the media. This is not, I shouldn't take all this time. I'm so sorry.
No, why don't you continue,
But I am
because I
so
would only ask
full.
you after.
Because this is life work. When they see that we don't trust them, that we don't believe them, that we don't think they're capable, and we message that, we give them the ammunition and the weapons to become angry and hopeless people. I am so fortunate to be in an environment where I might be able on any day to keep that from becoming the reality for one child.
Thank you. Actually, just taking our format to the next step. Carl, Dr. Hussain, could you reflect on what Georgina just said about young people and sort of the role that what you do plays in that perception, self-perception?
First off, I was remiss in thanking We Are All Brooklyn, and also particularly Rabbi Kaplan for inviting me this morning. My mother would be very upset at me for not thanking you, but it really is an honor and a pleasure to be part of this distinguished panel. You know, with remarking to Georgina's remarks about children, I mean, you know, where I sit or where I sat at the chamber, and particularly how kids were perceived by businesses and vice versa. I mean, I have to say that it has to be a learning process in many respects. You know, I think that you know, and I've been involved in economic development in one shape, form, or the other for a good part of 20 years, and I recall from my days when I was I was the director of economic development in Red Hook back in 1991. You know, those were very different days in Red Hook than what is compared to today of Fairway and IKEA and Red Hook and everything else. One of my keenest experiences when I was working at Red Hook was that I ran an employment services program. My charge was to convince local businesses to hire local community residents